Beep, 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 beep. We are today in Filmland. Welcome to the court of the EDI Jester, and a fascinating piece from Spiked Online that I'm sure that you will find interesting, written by Dara McManus. The title of which is How Pixar Infantilized the World. Fascinating. Buy me a coffee, become a warrior teacher, do me a super thanks, subscribe to my Substack, all the usual stuff. I hope you're all well. Okay, lots going on, but I hope you're well. For the past 3 decades, What? For the past 3 decades, Pixar's films have convinced us that emotions are everything. Now, warrior teachers will know well that in the warrior teacher sessions we are interested in what you think, not what you feel. What you feel is immaterial. So what we're thinking is what we're most interested in. I'm a great exponent of this. I think the elevation of emotions and feelings is insanity. I mean, we've lost the plot. So Elemental, it begins here, which is a film, Pixar's latest animated movie, is unsurprisingly about elements. Really? Right, okay. Specifically, it's about the inner lives and interpersonal dynamics of the 4 classical elements. Anthropomorphized blobs of air, fire, water, and earth live in a place called, Pixar's really phoning it in at this point, Element City. A fire thing falls for a water thing. They have feelings. Something happens. You have more feelings. You know the drill. This is so astute. I love it, right? The premise of Elements, it's in the Dubras, by the way. The premise of Elements is the same as almost every other Pixar flick since Toy Story broke the mold back in 1995. I love Toy Story. It's an amazing film. Amazing. And they were consistently good up to a point. Elements asks the now classic Pixar question of, what if such and such could talk and have emotions? And sure, these kinds of movies have given us countless hours of entertainment and distraction for the kiddies, but they have also ruined the world. Allow me to explain. For some years now, everything in life has been governed by hot emotions rather than cool intellect. I love that line. Do you agree? Tell me in the Dubras. You know I do. So tell me in the Dubras. Have hot emotions ruled rather than cool intellect? And I mean governed, literally. My life has been governed by hot emotions, everything in life. And I mean governed, literally. Consider someone like Donald Trump. He's an uncontrollable whirlwind of feeling and impulses. Yet for 4 years, he was the most powerful man on the planet. Those in the anti-Trump camp are just as bad in their abnegation of rational thought. Look at infantile idiocy like the Trump baby blimp, which appears at every anti-Trump demo, or at the constant shrieks of fascism. There is an overweening air of hysteria to the so-called resistance. You could, of course, apply this to the trans rights activists and Antifa swine that we see at every event that women put on. There is an overweening air of hysteria to the so-called resistance. Brilliant. Or take Brexit, when melodramatic doommongers likened the democratic vote to the rise of Hitler, and who declared, or perhaps secretly hoped, that the UK would collapse into ruin as a result of leaving the EU. Emotions now overrule thought. We see it everywhere. This is brilliant. Think of cancel culture. Trigger warnings. Left-wing snowflakes. Right-wing snowflakes. We're told that everything is racist, that I'm a woman if I feel I am, and everyone is shouting and roaring abuse at each other all the time. It's clear that logic and reason are not much in evidence anymore. And for me, the real shift was not the populist arrival of social media or the populist revolts of 2016. No, it started on the 22nd November 1995, the day Pixar released Toy Story, its first full-length feature. Interestingly enough, I think that was a few years before Frank Ferretti wrote his great book, Therapy Cultures. Don't get me wrong, Toy Story was fantastic. It deservedly won awards. It entertained parents as much as children. It raised the bar for what cartoons could do. And it founded a dynasty that dominates cinema to this day. Since then, Pixar's films have been cumulatively watched, rewatched, and loved deeply by billions of people. And they've exerted a massive influence on our culture. Sadly, this has brought catastrophe. The warning signs were there from the beginning. What if toys had emotions? It's a brilliant idea for a cartoon. Simply clever, funny and wonderful. Then A Bug's Life asked, what if insects had emotions? Then Monsters, Inc. asked, what if the characters from our nightmares had emotions? And we were off. Over the past 28 years, Pixar has seeded our subconscious with the possibility that fish have emotions and cars have emotions. Robots and Epicurean rats have emotions. Epicurean rats, that's ratatouille, isn't it? Have emotions. Not to mention superheroes, dinosaurs, ghosts, aeroplanes, sea monsters, elves, and probably a ton of other examples I've forgotten here. There's even one Pixar film, Inside Out, that asks, what if emotions themselves had emotions? Essentially, Pixar has told us that everything on the planet has and is primarily driven by emotions. It is all emotions, emotions, emotions. And everything around us now reflects this. Our culture, our society, and tragically, our politics are now dominated by emotions. Pixar has turned our world into a kindergarten. Will we ever grow up? It's a wonderful, almost whimsical observation. So thank you very much indeed for this, Dara McManus. It's a piece well worth reading, and one that's close to my heart because I am, as many of you will already know, an absolute freak when it comes to film. I love film. Part of the Warrior Teacher program is about growing up. We do a session on that. We do 4 sessions on that, I think, on growing up. He's not wrong. I can tell you that now. He's not wrong. The ascendancy of infantilism. But I think this happened long before then. I think it's before 1995, actually. I think it's before 1995. Not long before. When we started to give the state permission to tell us what to eat and how to live. When we made the state so big that it could interfere in our lives in almost every single way that it wants to. That was when it started. When we started telling people, don't do this, it's bad for you, that's when it started. Right? That's when it started, I think. So it may be that I would disagree on the entry point, but I certainly agree on the substantive analysis that Dara's given us in this cultural identity, cultural observation piece, which I think is fascinating. But we have to, roll forward. Frank Ferretti wrote Therapy Cultures in the early 2000s, I think it was, Frank, if I remember. And I've watched since The Ascendancy of Emotion, and you can watch people who empty their emotional bowels in public constantly. And no, it's not okay. It isn't okay. Calls for people to cry more. You should cry more, particularly men. Men should cry more. I'm an old man. Trust me, I cry a lot. But I don't cry for the reasons that most people think old men do cry. We cry and we cry alone, which is what most people should do. Because your feelings and your emotions lie to you constantly about reality. And it is their resistance and their subjugation that brings about change that is positive, not their elevation and their worship. So I don't know what to say to you about this, other than that go away and have a think and let me know what your opinion is and the doobra is. I'm of the opinion that we need to put emotions and feeling back in the box where they belong, i.e. marked, nobody else needs to care. Because when you've got friends around you and you want to get upset, or you do get upset, my friends are there to hold my hand, and they'll be there for most people. And most people will have family that they can turn to, or somebody else that will give a damn. If you're in trouble, ask online and somebody will help you. That's usually what I've found. You're on Twitter. Somebody puts on Twitter, I'm incredibly down with this news. And people will put, if you need to talk, just text me. And from that text will become a phone call. And from that phone call, friendships are formed. That's how you deal with it. It has no place in the public sphere. None. The ascendancy of feeling over emotion. How did it happen? And why have we got there where we are, which is today? Is a very interesting question to ask ourselves, because I think it's far bigger than just simply what Pixar did. Far bigger. But what its roots are is probably another interesting conversation for another day. Go well. Let me know what you think in the doobras. Buy me a coffee, the usual. I'll see you later.